Greetings aspirants. Welcome to Narayana IAS. This is Ananta Krishna, and in this session of daily news analysis, we have picked up certain important articles from Hindu as well as Indian Express for discussion and getting more understanding and clarity from the UPSC Civil Service examination point of view. Before moving to the articles that we have chosen for discussion today, we request you to like, share and comment on the video, and also don't forget to subscribe to our channel Narayana IAS. We shall look into the articles for discussion for today. The first article is from the Hindu from page number 1, which is titled Use Dictionary Meaning of Forest, Supreme Court Tells Center, which is in fact referring to various connotations and various conflicts and the ambiguities which are there with regard to what should be considered as a forest. The second article that we have chosen is again from the Hindu, which is referring to the state visit of the Greece Prime Minister to India, where he is referring to Greece as gateway to India and India as a gateway to Europe. This is published in page number 8, the Delhi edition. The third article that we have chosen is again from the Hindu, which is titled The Recent Report on Local Fintech Players on page number 10. This is in fact looking into some of the concerns that have been raised by the Parliamentary Standing Committee on the digital payment ecosystem in India. The fourth article is again from the Hindu, which is titled 100 years ago, Satyendra Nath Bose changed physics forever. This is the centenary celebration of the Bose-Einstein statistics, and this is published in Science page number 2, again from the Hindu Delhi edition. The last article is from the Indian Express, which is referring to the Uniform Civil Code that has been recently enacted in Uttarakhand, where it is titled Neither Uniform Nor Civil, published on page number 11. At the end, we also have certain practice questions which are both MCQ and the descriptive type. We shall move to the discussion over the articles. Dear students, embark on your UPSC journey with Narayana IAS Academy. Our esteemed 5-year and 3-year integrated programs are now open for admissions in Hyderabad, Vijayawada and Nellore. Our courses include robust R&D backed initiatives such as daily news analysis, daily news review, which are comprehensive review programs for a broader understanding of current affairs. We also have NCERT program, a foundational course that covers all NCERT syllabi, which forms crucial for your foundational UPSC preparation. We have mentorship program for very personalized guidance and regular test series for systematic learning and systematic assessment. Students, begin your journey to become a leader with Narayana IAS Academy today. Moving to the first article, we will discuss this article published on page number 1 in Hindu. It is titled Use Dictionary Meaning of Forest, Supreme Court Tells Center. As you clearly see, there is some amendment which has been passed by the Parliament, and in this amendment over the Forest Conservation Act, the definition of forest has been tweaked in this particular amendment, and which is being the subject matter for the Supreme Court to interpret in this particular interim order that it has passed. We will look into the details. Look at this particular topic and its importance from the definition of forest as per the Forest Conservation Act 1980. And number 2, this article is being discussed from the preliminary point of view, that is general issues on environmental ecology, biodiversity and climate change being the topic that has been mentioned. Look at this previous year question asked in 2019. Consider the following statements. First statement is, as per the recent amendment to the Indian Forest Act 1927, forest dwellers have the right to fell the bamboos grown on forest areas, which is the false statement. Second statement, as per the Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Recognition of Forest Rights Act 2006, bamboo is a minor forest produce, which is a correct statement. The Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Recognition of Forest Rights Act 2006 allows ownership of minor forest produce to forest dwellers. If you look at these three statements, clearly forest as an expression is being used. However, there is dispute over the definition of forest. Supreme Court has given certain connotation to this particular expression. However, Union government is attempting to amend this particular definition or tweak this particular definition such that there is balance that is being attained. What is the balance, and between what this balance is being attained, we look at in the topic. As you see in this particular context, Supreme Court has issued an interim order. This interim order has been issued in this case of Ashok Kumar Sharma IFS retired and others versus Union of India and others in 2023. What is this interim order all about? In this interim order, it has directed the states and union territories to act as per the definition of forest as the Supreme Court has laid down in her judgment in this case of T.N. Godavarman Tirumalpad versus Union of India in 1996. In this particular case, it said that the forest as a definition must be reverted to what is referred to as its dictionary meaning as we attribute to the expression forest. We look into the background. Clearly, we have this Forest Act 1927. Forest Act 1927. However, this Forest Act 1927 could not prevent this issue of deforestation in India, and hence this Forest Conservation Act 1980 was enacted in order to check this deforestation as a process which is occurring, and hence it may lead to the preservation of ecological balance by preventing the ecological imbalances. This is the first requirement we had. On the other hand, Forest Conservation Act must also keep in what is referred to as the social development or socio-economic development. So, the twin planks of what is referred to as ecological balance and the social development as another plank, both of these must be balanced with each other and must be kept in equilibrium. This particular which has been enforced has brought in force a prohibition, and this prohibition is all about felling of forest trees, and this felling of forest trees was not allowed for non-forestry purposes, and if you are doing it, then you should have the approval of the union government. Now, given this, the legal definition of a forest, which also decides the application of what is referred to as Forest Conservation Act, has been hence a contentious issue since December 1996, because in December 1996, there was a situation wherein Supreme Court came up with its particular judgment in that particular case that we were referring to, Godavarman Tirumalpad case. Now, before December 12, 1996, both state and union governments extended the coverage of this Forest Conservation Act to those forests which are notified under the Indian Forest Act 1927 and any other area which is notified by other local laws. Here we must also keep in mind that in order to enact this Forest Conservation Act 1980, we also had a particular event that has occurred through 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act. We must keep in mind that the forests which were earlier there in the state list have been added to now concurrent list as a new entry which is referred to as entry 17A. Given this, the state list subject now has become a concurrent list subject, and hence union government too has now jurisdiction over this particular subject. Now, going back to this expression forest, we clearly see that this term forest has been given a broad meaning by the Supreme Court then in this case of 1996 in order to preserve the green cover, whereby you are not subjecting it to its nature, the kind of classification and ownership. That means even if a private individual or person is owning a chunk of land wherein there is a tree cover, even this is also protected under the Forest Conservation Act. And there cannot be any kind of classification within the forest such that any kind of forest must need protection as per this particular law. Moreover, irrespective of the nature of the forest that you are referring to or tree cover that you are referring to, that also must be protected. So, the Supreme Court has kept aside all these possibilities in its earlier judgment. What is the issue now? The issue now is that the government has amended this Forest Conservation Act such that it could bifurcate the definition of forests into twofold. One, the declared forests, that means the forests which have been hitherto declared as per the Forest Conservation Act or covered under the Forest Conservation Act, and the lands which are recorded as forests in the government records after 1980. So they have made this twin-fold classification. As you clearly see earlier, that this particular classification is also irrelevant for the purposes of forest as per the earlier judgment. What it did is, the government records which contained in itself the provision that it will include lands which are recognized as forest by any state or union territory or a local body or council, even the recognized communities. All these must be now put into this particular categorization or definition of government records, which are referring to the lands which are included as forest after 1980. Now, government wanted to do this because in its white paper in 2021, it was raising a twofold concerns. One, government was saying that it is burdened with lot of import bill of timber. For example, it was saying that annually the government is spending nearly 45,000 crores on the import of wood and wood derivatives that we are referring to. On the other hand, it also said one conceptual thing, that is, in any tropical country like India, any piece of land, if you are leaving it unattended, then it would have led to the growth of wild vegetation. And in such a case, and if you are treating such land as deemed forest, using the dictionary meaning that has been attributed to the expression forest, then there will be so much of land which would be covered under the protection. So you are taking it away from the possibility of the requirement of social development, such as removal of poverty or any other such requirement, or any infrastructural development or any other such requirement. And hence it says this is absurd as per this particular definition. Given these concerns, we also have certain matters which are touched upon by the interim order. When it says that the process of identifying land which has recorded as forest as per the twinfold classification that the government made in the government records by the states and union territories, still you have to do it as per the definition of forest that has been laid down in this judgment of 1996. In this case of Godavarman Tirumalpad versus Union of India. Second, as it said, hence again the definition of forest has been brought back to the earlier meaning of whatever the dictionary that we had attributing to this particular expression forest. Third, in this interim order, Supreme Court also said that the narrowing of the definition, whatever we do, will clearly take out nearly 2 lakh square kilometers of forest land from the ambit of this definition of forest. On the other hand, when you say that we are establishing zoos or safaris as the state would declare, referred to in the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 as owned by the government or any authority in the forest areas other than the protected areas, Supreme Court said that its approval is mandatory. There are two fundamental concerns that the government has with respect to this judgment. One, as Supreme Court is saying that its approval is mandatory, in a way it is being seen as judicial encroachment into the actions of the executive or subject matters of the executive, number one. Number two, when we say that forest has been attributed with this dictionary meaning, all those tree covers are also brought under the definition of the forest. On the one hand, we have a situation wherein the forest dwellers or the traditional forest dwellers which have been attributed with this Forest Rights Act are not being given their due rights as per this law, but on the other hand, the implementation of this definition is making, according to government, social development a near difficult task. It is these two concerns that the government was expressing. So what is the way forward? Clearly, we must keep in mind that the National Forest Policy has this target of bringing 30% of the country's area under geographic area under this definition of forest or under the tree cover. However, as of now, as this white paper mentions, we have only a coverage of 24.56% of the geographic area under the definition of forest. So, as the Forest Conservation Act treats a private owned area as forest or so-called deemed forest, like lands with the tree cover, the owner has to hence compensate for equal area if he or she wants to take up any non-forestry activities. This is called as compensatory afforestation, and this is legally binding. So in this particular way forward, what we are seeing is, in case if there is any violation has to be made to this particular definition of forest, as we clearly have under this forest policy that this target of 33% of tree cover across the territory has to be reached, this compensatory afforestation hence becomes mandatory. And if this is being followed, then the concerns over the definition of forest would be diminishing. And the government's policy would also be in tune with the requirement of ecological balance that has to be kept in mind. Moving to the next article, we will look into this topic of Greece gateway to Asia, India is gateway to Europe. As you clearly know that the upcoming state visit of Greek's Prime Minister has raised a lot of significance, not only in the minds of media, but also in the minds of the strategic decision makers within the governments. This particular topic is significant from GS2 mains perspective, where the effect of policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India's interests and Indian diaspora holds key. Look at this previous year question. The ancient civilization in Indian subcontinent differed from those of Egypt, Mesopotamia and Greece in that its culture and traditions have been preserved without breakdown to the present day. Comment. Even though this question is from culture, we clearly know that this relationship is built on the very old and antiquity based cultural relations that both India and Greece as regions have. We shall look at the context. As I said, the Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis is visiting the New Delhi, and this visit is being hailed as the one which reinforces and takes forward India-Greece strategic partnership that was announced previously when Prime Minister Modi visited Greece in August 2023. And this has been seen as a very far-reaching visit earlier also when Modi has visited Greece, and we shall see what are those aspects which are important from this visit from the examination point of view. There are two fundamental things that we have to keep in mind here. One is the situation within the Mediterranean Sea and also in the Red Sea, and the situation within the larger Indian Ocean or Indo-Pacific region. Now, we shall look at the key background. Remember that both of these nations have established their diplomatic relations way back in 1950. However, India could open its resident embassy in Athens only in 1978. Second, we have to keep in mind that since the beginning of this relationship, both of them were sharing a common commitment towards the certain fundamental values and fundamental principles both of these nations believe in. One such common element is the democracy as a fundamental principle. Number two, the peace and development in the entire world, and also to a social system which has these principles of what is referred to as justice and equality, which is making both of these nations very, very close in terms of thought process and ideologies. Third, we also have to keep in mind that both of these nations are sharing common approaches fundamentally to some of the international issues. For example, the international issues such as reforms within the UN system, particularly with respect to the permanent membership within the Security Council, and also issues concerning what is referred to as Cyprus as a nation. So, this common approach also has brought them together. Third, if you recall, following India's nuclear tests, which in fact is a substantial thing to establish that both of them are sharing very strong relationship, in spite of the fact that there are some of the factors which are not seen as substantial in this particular relationship. When India had held its nuclear tests in 1998, remember, most of the Western nations were contemplating sanctions against India, and Greece had been one of those very few nations, including France, where their defense minister has visited India in December 1998, who is a first defense minister from the group of NATO countries to visit India after these tests, and he signed an MOU on defense cooperation, which is in fact hence is a reflection of the trustworthy relationship that both of these mutually have. It is this which keeps this relationship at the higher pedestal. Now, what is the importance of this particular relationship, even though we know that it's a very strategic and trustworthy relationship? Primarily, as both of these governments see, it is flowing from their geographic location. Their geographic location, if you observe, India is opening into the Indian Ocean, and similarly, Greece is opening into the Mediterranean Sea. They are located strategically in such a way that they are important for the entire global system. If you recall Mediterranean system and the Red Sea region, it is this particular region now which is in fact catering to nearly 50% of the trade volume across the globe, particularly with respect to energy requirements. Similarly, Indian Ocean region is also catering to more than 40% of the contribution towards the global GDP. Given this significance, we see that this region and these two countries within the region, because of their strategic location, become very, very important. However, as we clearly see that this is there at the same time when geopolitically these two regions have become volatile. That is in the context of Red Sea crisis that we are witnessing. Second, because of this alone, the security, stability and prosperity of the entire region of Mediterranean region, particularly of East Mediterranean region, where Greece is situated, is vitally dependent upon the security, stability and prosperity of the Indian Ocean region. Both of these hence, as we see, security dimension wise are mutually interdependent. Hence, as Greece positions itself as the reliable eastern flank of the European Union and also as a trustworthy member of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization in the Eastern Mediterranean, this is enabling us to build a defense industry in partnership with the Greece as a nation, wherein this can expand to even European Union and also the NATO as a very significant global association dealing with the security matters. So, this idea of constructing even what is referred to as India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor is also clearly in tune with these particular attributes that you are seeing, where the strategic importance can be clearly located. It is the first importance that we have with respect to this relationship. As you see in this particular diagram, as it is opening into the Mediterranean Sea having its connection with the Red Sea, wherein this is opening into the entire Europe as a region. This makes it very, very fundamental for our relationship to be there with Greece as strategic partnership. On the other hand, there is also economic importance that we attach to this relationship. In order to expand to the entire Europe with Greece as a gateway, both these nations have announced that their trade have to be doubled from the current levels of $2 billion in 2020 to 2023. At present, as we see, India exports mainly aluminium, the organic chemicals, fishes and iron and steel to Greece, and Greece on the other hand is exporting the mineral fuels which are important and mineral oils and products such as sulfur and aluminium foil. On the other hand, both of these nations have also moved forward with respect to migration related concerns that mutually have. This is what is also attributing to the possibility of the orderly and safe fashion in which the migration has to happen. On the other hand, both of these nations strategically have located their focus upon mutual investments and infrastructure development. For example, GMR was allocated with the redevelopment of the Athens airport, and similarly there were such other infrastructural projects that were being taken up by the Indian companies in Greece. On the other hand, primarily in terms of even the financial sector, we see that both of them are having close partnership. For example, this billionaire Prem Vatsa, who is an Indian Canadian. He is fostering the entire association which is trying to have the close partnership with respect to this financial sector, hailing from both Greece and India. On the other hand, Greece also is a strong supporter of both EU-India relations and particularly the bilateral trade and investment agreement that both of these are trying to conclude upon at the earliest. And hence, this India-EU relationship, as we clearly see, is opening up further opportunities both at the strategic level in terms of security and military levels. On the other hand, it is also enabling us to have closer defense and economic partnerships. What is the way forward that we have? Again, this goes back to that fundamental aspect of this relationship. Closer people-to-people ties that is based on the heritage and culture which is hailing from our ancient history must be encouraged. Second, there need to be more university student level exchange that has to happen, including the cultural exchanges, and also there has to be more media cooperation mutually such that the strong linkages can be furthered. Third, there are think tanks in both of these countries, particularly in the economic, defense and security sphere, where these think tanks can build mutual scholarship whereby the common challenges and global challenges can be addressed. If you recall, when Greece was going through its own financial crisis, post 2008 financial crisis, India is also one of the nations which has tried to provide the possible support to the revival of the Greece economy. And this was possible because of the scholarship which was being shared mutually. Third, and lastly, we must keep in mind that there can definitely be more travel related and migration related linkages whereby this can build further trustworthiness between both of these nations. And this augurs well for the strategic and security, peace and the prosperity of the not just both of these regions but the entire world. Moving to the next article, we will discuss on this recent report that has been presented to the Parliament by the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Communications and Information Technology. It was referring to some of the issues concerned with the local financial technology players. What are those issues and what are those concerns? We will discuss after looking into this previous year question paper. Look at this particular previous year question asked in preliminary examination of 2019. Consider the following statements. The Reserve Bank of India's recent directives related to the storage and payment system data, popularly known as the data dictate, command the payment system providers that, first statement, they shall ensure that entire data relating to the payment systems operated by them are stored in a system only in India. Second statement, they shall ensure that the systems are owned and operated by public sector enterprises. The third statement is they shall submit the consolidated system audit report to the Comptroller and Auditor General of India by the end of the calendar year. You can clearly see that anything related to the financial technology related players and anything related to their regulation can be a hot topic for UPSC preliminary examination. Moving to the context, as we have already discussed, the Standing Committee on Communications and Information Technology, they have submitted a report to the Parliament in which they have raised concerns about the dominance of the financial technology applications as owned by the foreign entities in the Indian ecosystem, and they were also recommending simultaneously the role to be promoted for specifically the local players, that means who are hailing from the Indian economy alone. Second, it also noted that it will be more feasible for the regulatory bodies such as RBI and the payment system regulator, in fact, is the National Payments Corporation of India, to control the local apps as compared with the foreign apps which operate in the multiple jurisdiction. This is another note that the report was making. It is in this particular context we are trying to look at some of the aspects related to this report from the examination point of view. First of all, we shall try to know what this Standing Committee on Communications and Information Technology is. As you already know, the Standing Committee will have members from both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, as part of Parliamentary Standing Committee system. This consists of, as you clearly see, 31 members. Number 1, out of these 31 members, the 21 members would be from Lok Sabha, who are nominated by the office of Speaker Lok Sabha, and the 10 members are from the upper house, that is the Rajya Sabha, who are nominated by again the chairperson of the Rajya Sabha. Who will be the chairman of this particular committee? The chairperson of this particular committee would be appointed by the speaker from amongst the members from the members of the Lok Sabha who have been nominated to this particular committee by the speaker. Having seen what the composition of this particular committee is, that is the Standing Committee on Communications and Information Technology, the concerns raised by the Parliamentary Standing Committee through its report on the digital payment ecosystem is of twofold. One, they say that the usage of digital platforms for making payments in India is on the rise. However, in this rise of digital payments, what they see is there is predominant role to be played by, or predominant role being played by the foreign-owned fintech apps such as the PhonePe and Google Pay. On the other hand, they see that the promotion of local players has to be made, and it is in this particular respect there has to be some regulatory control that has to be exercised by the regulators such as RBI and NPCL. On the other hand, you also observe that these foreign apps which are operating across different jurisdictions, by which it means that not only the money flow which is occurring across different jurisdictions, but also the data flow which is occurring across different jurisdictions is making it difficult to exercise regulatory control by either RBI or NPCL. On the other hand, if you look at the market share observations, which is the second concern that the Standing Committee report is actually raising. On the one hand, you see that the digital payments are rising in terms of volume, which is contributing to the extent of more than 73% as the report. But on the other hand, in terms of value, they are just contributing to a mere 6.6% of the entire transactions, by which it means that the volume of transactions, even though are high, as the value of transactions is less, even smaller transactions are being done for a number of times, by which it means that out of entire fraternity of digital payment systems that you have, either in the form of NEFT or in the form of any other such system, you find that the app-based payments are very, very low in terms of the value. That means the volume of transactions are actually becoming a burden on the digital payment ecosystem. This is the second concern that the committee is raising. And even in terms of market share, if you observe, PhonePe is having a market share which is nearly to the tune of 47%, followed by the Google Pay which is nearly at 36%. As you can again clearly see, in terms of even the number of transactions, both of these foreign players are having a predominant role in the UPI ecosystem. On the other hand, the BHIM UPI's market share by volume is merely at this level of 0.2%, by which the concerns seem to be on the correct side. On the other hand, there are other concerns that the committee was also raising. As these fintech apps are used for the payments, there can be possibility for the money laundering and hence the possibility of illegal activities for which this money can be used. Second, they also say that there is difficulty for the law enforcement agency to track this illegal money flows if they are done through these apps, if this money, for example, is flowing to China. Third, fraud to sales ratio remains low despite the increase in the digital payment volumes. This is another favorable thing that the report is actually raising. On the other hand, you also have this fact that the National Payments Corporation of India, in order to address these particular concerns, has issued a 30% volume cap on the transactions which are facilitated through the UPI payment systems. And here, as this is issued, that 30% of the total UPI transactions can be done within 3 months, there is a possibility of quantitative control. On the one hand, this quantitative control is unable to control the volume of transactions, but the value of transactions seem to be again very low. On the other hand, It is also aimed to mitigate the risks and protect the entire UPI ecosystem. Compliance timeline has also been extended up to the December 31st, 2024 to encourage growth and market equilibrium amongst all the players of this payment ecosystem. What is the impact on payment ecosystem that we see? These local fintech players have an advantage in understanding the Indian market and digital infrastructure. Hence, the local players have to be more promoted as the committee is recommending. Second, there is a need for a balanced mix of local and foreign players such that the ecosystem can function efficiently, wherein one can learn from each other in terms of best practices. On the other hand, it is also emphasizing upon the regulatory requirements of accountability and compliance with the local laws, particularly with respect to the data related concerns that we have. On the other hand, we see that the McKinsey report recently has highlighted this minimum transaction fee as an issue from the UPI, where this has to be collected by the UPI system such that you reduce the volume of transactions which are becoming a burden. But on the other hand, how difficult it is to eliminate any hidden cash management costs that might be involved as a concern in its report. On the other hand, it said that the UPI is contributing to changing consumer behavior and hence it has to be promoted further in spite of the fact that volume of transactions is high, and hence this might enhance the security and also this might increase access to the digital commerce channels. So this report has clearly shown a way forward in terms of what is the usage of this digital payment ecosystem. As we clearly know that we are moving towards setting up a digital economy, this report appears to be timely, where you can address these twin concerns that it has raised. Moving to the next article, we will discuss this centenary celebrations of Satyendra Nath Bose's ideas within physics, which has fundamentally altered the way in which we started understanding the physics. Deviating from or departing from the classical physics, this has laid foundations for the quantum physics and quantum theory. As another physicist and writer, Abraham Pais, has listed this particular paper that he has presented as one of the foundational aspects of the quantum theory. We shall look into the details. From the examination point of view, this is significant from GS paper 3, achievements of Indians in science and technology. Being a faculty at University of Dhaka, he could bring out this theory and present paper in order to lay the foundation for the quantum theory. What is the previous year question that we can look into for this particular topic? Straight away, if you look at this question asked in 2018, already he had been a focus for the UPSC. Discuss the work of Bose-Einstein statistics done by Professor Satyendra Nath Bose and how it has revolutionized the field of physics. We shall look into the details. As we know that we are discussing this issue in terms of or in the context of the 100th anniversary of Satyendra Nath Bose's discovery of this Bose-Einstein statistics in 2024. And we know that this has revolutionized the field of quantum mechanics. How and what we will look into. As you clearly know that the foundation for theoretical physics was laid down in the form of what is called as classical physics, and this classical physics was addressing how the matter was interacting with each other on the basis of the gravitational law proposed by Isaac Newton. And we know that either in terms of the velocity or in terms of what is referred to as angular momentum, there was action in terms of what is referred to as force. So force is being seen as interaction between the matter. However, this was functioning very well when you are looking at the matter which are of macro shape. But however, this particular classical physics was inapplicable, was not functioning theoretically with respect to the microscopic matter. It is this which has laid the foundations for further theoretical studies in what is referred to as physics. So the movement from classical physics to particle physics and then to quantum physics had been very, very smooth and rough. Given this particular movement, one particular foundational paper has been presented by Satyendra Nath Bose. It is in this particular context we are discussing Satyendra Nath Bose. Clearly, in 1900, Max Planck has tried to solve one of the fundamental problems in physics. And this fundamental problem is related to what is called as radiation. And this radiation, whenever was happening from the hot bodies. And this classical physics, either in terms of Newton's law or in terms of the forces which were acting for the with respect to what is referred to as velocity or angular momentum, all these were unable to explain this particular phenomena. So what Max Planck said is, he said that this particular radiation is being emitted by the hot bodies. However, he took an ideal situation wherein a hot body is referred to as black body, where this black body may emit radiation but it will not reflect radiation. However, as I said, this being the ideal one, it was unable to explain the other forms of radiation. It is this particular lacuna which remained for a longer period of time, even though the experiments were being done in this particular aspect. Now, as you see, the contribution of Satyendra Nath comes into picture with respect to this particular aspect. Before this, Einstein has laid down theoretically that just like matter is made up of certain fundamental particles, either in the form of bosons, which are fundamentally the formative particles which try to make this matter interact with each other in the form of force. Similarly, he also said that light is being acted in the form of what is called as packets of energy. He referred to this as quanta. So, light is being seen in the form of quanta. Taking understanding from this particular theoretical foundation and also having that statistical model from Max Planck, who could show that at the ideal level the radiation is occurring, what Satyendra Nath Bose has done is he tried to draw why this ideal model is also true and what is that remaining gap that has to be bridged. He said the light or the radiation is being emitted. However, this is being emitted in various frequencies, in various packets of energy. So, energy is being emitted in terms of packets, and just like matter is made up of certain formative particles, light is also made up of certain packets of quanta. And having come to this conclusion, Satyendra Nath Bose could now prove through what is referred to as the Bose-Einstein statistics and lay the foundation for quantum theory. So, the particles that obey Bose-Einstein statistics are being referred to as bosons, and we know that these bosons are the ones which are force carriers, wherein barring gravitational force, the remaining three fundamental forces of nature, whether it is electromagnetic force or weak nuclear force or strong nuclear force, all these three forces are fundamentally because of what is referred to as bosons. This has provided the necessary base for the quantum theory. And what they have found is that the Higgs boson particle, which has also been part of this boson as a particle, put together all these force carriers become composite particles such as atoms at very low temperatures. So, the identification and understandings of these bosons was what crucial for the development of, as I said, quantum field theory, including the standard model of particle physics, as it shows that there are four fundamental forces in its standard model based on this particle physics, and by definition all these four forces are being represented in the form of these particles called bosons. On the other hand, the Bose himself did not directly predict the Bose-Einstein condensate. What is this Bose-Einstein condensate? It's a state of matter that occurs in a dilute gas of bosons when they are cooled to certain temperatures which are very close to absolute zero. in this particular state, a large fraction of bosons are being seen with the occupying of lowest quantum state, resulting in a macroscopic quantum phenomena. This is the experimental basis for us to actually understand what is referred to as Big Bang explosion later. Hence, this is the first experimental evidence of BEC which was achieved in 1995 after decades after Bose's initial work. Given these importance of these particular works, the centenary celebration of Bose's contributions towards the theoretical physics is rewarding. Moving to the last article, we will discuss this article published in Indian Express. It is titled Neither Uniform Nor Civil. As you can identify, this is clearly referring to the Uniform Civil Code which has been enacted in Uttarakhand recently. We will look into these details. This particular article, because of its topic, Uniform Civil Code, is important from GS Paper 1 for society under this tag secularism and under GS Paper 2 from the perspective of governance. Look at this previous year question. Discuss the possible factors that inhibit India from enacting for its citizen a uniform civil code as provided for in the Directive Principles of State Policy, asked in 2015. A mere direct question. This clearly tells you again this topic is important for the exam. What is the context? We clearly know that early in this particular month, Uttarakhand Assembly has passed this Uniform Civil Code Bill, becoming the first legislature to do so in independent India. Given this particular context, there are certain concerns and positive responses which have been aired by many stakeholders. We shall now look at what this Uniform Civil Code is. Clearly, we know that this is applicable to all those matters which are civilian in nature, referring to the entire society, cutting across diversity of the society. As it deals with the civilian matters, hence it is dealing with the issues such as marriage, issues such as divorce, issues such as maintenance, inheritance, adoption, or even the succession of the property. And we clearly know that the Directive Principles of State Policy under Article 44 direct the state to enact a uniform civil code, and it is this particular constitutional provision which is dealing with the Uniform Civil Code in India. And we clearly know that as this is being done, most of the such civil matters as on today are governed by their own respective personal laws which are driven by their own religious beliefs. And hence, this particular Uniform Civil Code will substitute all those distinct and different personal laws, and hence they are applicable to different religious communities within the state. It is this which has been raised as a concern. Now, what are those ambiguities, concerns, and those which lead to inequality and injustice through this particular law? First one is that there was preference which were given to what is called as the patrilineal structure of the society, which is what referred to as the agnatic relatives. There is no preference or reference to the matrilineal structures. This is one such thing that makes this particular law unequal and unjust, as it is being expressed as a concern. Second, this is also silent on what is referred to as Hindu undivided family. If there is a Hindu undivided family, and if there is an issue of succession of property, or if there is any issue of maintenance, inheritance, or any such issue, how are you going to deal with it? And by definition, Hindu undivided family is defined by their own religious definition. This is not being said as a concern in this particular law. Third, if there are live-in couples, then their matters can be governed by this particular law, but it requires them to initiate the registration process, and hence this may take away what is referred to as freedom of choice, because the question that has been asked is marriage necessary? Is live-in relationships are going against the system of marriage or the structure of the society? And hence this is a question that is based on the freedom of choice. Third, What about the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005? As we clearly know that this particular law cuts across all the religious aspects, all the other such aspects which govern the security of the women in a particular family, we clearly see that this Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005, as it has applicability, has been taken away by this particular law, wherein this law is making some of the issues related to few religions with respect to these civilian matters into a criminal thing. So the distinction that we have to make is this is a civil law but making some of the matters into a crime. How come a civil law become a criminal law both at once together? This is the another concern. On the other hand, we also know that the live-in relationships are also subjected by this Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005. However, this particular law is silent on those particular aspects. Moreover, what about the maintenance rights that legally must go to the unregistered women, that is, the women who are not registered in terms of marriage? On the other hand, if there is a section of the community referred to as LGBTQ, what about all these concerns over the marriage, divorce, maintenance, inheritance, or even to that extent of adoption and succession of property with respect to such communities who have different gender-related perspectives? And it is these ambiguities and inequalities which are being raised as concerns. Now, there are certain challenges also in implementing this uniform civil code. The first such challenge is that many of the personal laws which are being replaced by this particular law are not codified. So, as they are not codified, which part of this particular personal law, as we refer to, has been included in this UCC is now a concern. And hence, as they are not codified, there can be multiple number of interpretations, and hence this can lead to lot of legal tussles. On the other hand, many tribal groups would have their own personal codes. Now, these tribal groups have a kind of protection under the constitutional scheme, and this protection will be withering if this law is being implemented. So, both of these are referring to the issues related to diverse personal laws that we have. On the other hand, there is also opposition from minority groups, obviously, because it takes away their personal laws from their interpretation, from their implementation, and this will also be seen as the threat to religious freedom and the cultural autonomy of these groups. On the other hand, we know that Constitution has guaranteed right to freedom of religion and conscience under Article 25, and they are seeing this as a clear violation. On the other hand, what sort of political will that the government has to implement this, when we clearly see that there is absence of consensus amongst all the agencies of the government or organs of the government, including the civil society, which is another pressure group, and much of these pressure groups are actually opposing this. Moreover, it also has lot of cumbersome procedure, wherein you have to draft, you have to codify, and you have to also harmonize the personal laws. It is this aspect of harmonizing the personal laws, codifying the personal laws, where these are different for different communities based on different factors, make this particular law very, very cumbersome and very, very difficult to sustain. However, there are certain benefits that are being notified by the government as per this particular law. One, there is possibility of integration of all the communities in terms of fraternity, that is the emotional integration, that is what referred to as national integration. Second, this may also lead to gender justice, particularly because Article 14, as it symbolizes this principle of equality or general principle of equality, can grant now equal rights and equal status to women in all these aspects of marriage, divorce, succession, adoption, etc. All these civilian matters. And in the patrilineal societies, you clearly see that this is being denied for the women. In spite of the fact that it is still oriented towards such structure, yet the uniformity will make it possible that women may get an elevated status because of this particular law. And there is also simplification of the legal system because it is trying to harmonize civil and criminal laws, whereby uniformity in implementation would be possible. On the other hand, it also reforms many of the outdated practices that we have, cutting across different religions, such as the polygamy and child marriages. These benefits are what Uniform Civil Code is offering. In spite of those concerns, in spite of these benefits, what we have is there are imbalances because of the concerns that we have, in spite of the fact that there are certain favorable factors. Yet, as these imbalances are there, there must be a way forward. Clearly, on an objective basis, it should ensure that there is justice, there is equality, and there is cultural sensitivity. Three of these objectives, if you bring into the implementation and if you bring into the codification, that would be having long and durable sustainability as part of the Indian legal system. Having completed the discussion over the articles, we shall now move to certain practice questions. Let us look into these prelims practice questions. Take this first question. Consider the following statements regarding digital payment systems in India. Unified Payments Interface UPI commands a 73.5% share in value of total digital payments in financial year 2022-2023. Second statement, there is a dominance of fintech apps owned by foreign entities in the Indian ecosystem. Which of the above statements are correct? Answer has to be 2 alone, because as we have learnt, UPI doesn't command so much of share but just merely 0.22% of the share. Moving to the next question, consider the following statements. The National Forest Policy has stipulated a target of bringing 33% of the country's area under forests and tree cover, which is the correct statement. Currently, 24.56% of geographical area in India is covered under forests, which is also correct as per the white paper that is submitted by the government. And 3, in T.N. Godavarman Tirmalpath versus Union of India 1996 case, the Supreme Court has attributed the dictionary meaning of the expression forest to the definition of forest. All these 3 statements being correct, all of the above has to be the right choice for us. Move to the third question. The term bosons, sometimes mentioned in the news, is primarily associated with which of the following? Answer has to be simple: particle physics. The fourth question is, consider the following statements regarding parliamentary standing committees in India. Currently, there are only 24 standing committees. Second statement, each of these standing committees consists of 31 members, 21 from Lok Sabha and 10 from Rajya Sabha, to be nominated by the Speaker, Lok Sabha, and the Chairman Rajya Sabha respectively, which is a false statement because it is not uniformly having this membership of 31. And hence, the answer has to be none of the above. Fifth question, consider the following statements on Uniform Civil Code. Article 44 in the DPSP states that the state shall endeavour to secure for the citizens a uniform civil code throughout the territory of India, which is a correct statement. This article is binding on state governments to frame laws for implementing uniform civil code. As it is in DPSP, this is a false statement because DPSP is not justiciable and binding. Which of the above statements are correct? Answer has to be 1 only. A has to be the right choice. Take this mains practice question. In the context of security, peace and stability of Europe and Indo-Pacific regions, discuss the significance of India-Greece strategic partnership. 250 words, 20 markers. You can introduce your answer to this particular question by writing the commonality in approach of India and Greece towards regional and global issues. Second, you can also mention about the key geopolitical role that both of these nations can play by the similarity in the strategic geographic location of both of these nations. And here you can also mention about the significance of such a relationship to forge a secure, peaceful and stable regions. In the body, you can mention about the rise in the security, defense and economic linkages as the main plank of the strategic partnership, to the extent to which previously this relationship has been elevated. And you can also quote examples such as this India, Middle East, Europe corridor that is being proposed and conceived of to build, and then there are other approaches to various such targets that we have at the strategic level. So their common approaches to even reforms in the UN system and also issues such as Cyprus can also be cited. And in the conclusion, you may mention the mutual role that can be played by both of these nations, not only in the Mediterranean Sea and Red Sea regions, but also in the larger Indo-Pacific region, whereby this can enhance international law and also international peace and security. That's all for today. Thank you one and all for watching this. If you like this video, please do like, share and comment on this video, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel Narayana IAS. Thank you one and all.